He has a theme which is twice the sales in half the time. It's a moving market. And the trend is your friend. Duane is very well known. He's one of the best trainers in North America. Just because he has a different attitude. He's full of energy. He's attractive. Sorry, I had to throw it in there. Overselling? No, I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway, without further ado, when he hands out his stuff, we'll give you Duane Marino. Is everyone having a good time? Yes. That sucks. Is everyone having a good time? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So, without further ado, I'll pass out the full handouts. Duane Marino, everybody.
Everybody's okay? Yes? Yes. Okay, let's get this going. All right, what I've got is a sheet of paper there, which I'd like to start on the back of it, actually. So being a trainer, I tend to keep it interactive and kind of go that way. So I call this the 6 Ps. I want to start with this real quick. We've got about 45 or 50 minutes for a talk. Let's write down the first word, and the first word is principles. There's 3 principles of selling I don't see going away anytime soon. I think his talk was excellent on where the market's moving right now. And there's always a gap between where you are and where the market is. So when I first started, the gap was leasing. So leasing was taking off. Dealers didn't know how to do it. So I moved into the gap with training. Then the next big gap was lease renewals, because then the cycle was coming off. Nobody knew how to renew. So I moved into that gap. That created a big gap, which nobody could organize their data. So you may not know this, but I invented CRM for car dealers. So back in 1995, I contracted out to a software partner of mine in British Columbia, and we created the first CRM piece in automotive. And some dealers are still using it. So the gap there was organization of that window. Next big gap for me was skills. And this gap right now is this experience between online and live. And it's a real interesting dynamic how some people start in the showroom. We'll talk about who finishes online and who doesn't. Some people start online, finish in the showroom. But with principles, there's 3 points to write down if you could. And there's 3 things that I don't see going away anytime soon. One is lead generation. So whoever your dealership or salespeople are lead genning, if the website's driving that, if you're still trying to call, that's going to be a problem. How many of you have no landline in your life at home? No landline, only a cell phone. Show me. I asked this question in the last 12 months in Honolulu, in Halifax, in Shreveport, Louisiana, in Tampa, Florida, in Seattle, in California, in Vancouver, right across Canada, and my guess is 85% of people don't have a landline. So we're still telling our salespeople to call your customers, no landline. On your phones, you have something called caller ID or call display? How many of you absolutely do not pick up the phone hardly at all anymore unless you want to, you know who it is, and you feel like it's something you want to do? When a salesperson calls you in line at McDonald's or when you're wiping your kid's ass, what's your reaction to that salesperson? Yeah, because we're caught off guard because these things are with us personally all the time. So phoning right now is, I'm going to say, pretty ineffective. How many of you have more than one email address, personal or professional, more than one email? How many of you pick and choose who's going to get what email? How many of you absolutely do not open up, answer all your emails? Even with a primary email that goes to your phone, do you actually delete things out of your inbox without opening them, yes or no? Who here has a hard time listening to voicemail? Who does not listen to voicemail? Who has voice to text? If voice to text isn't working, you say, well, too bad for you. If you can't articulate well enough, I guess I'm not going to talk to you. Who has that attitude? Yes or no? So to me, it's all about psychology. Now, how many times a day are you checking your text messages? How many times a day do you think we're checking our texts? Why do we check our texts like an addiction? It's short. We probably have a relationship already. Somebody's texting. And I'm going to tell you, I still have, not clients, but dealerships that I meet, that their managers say, stop texting people and pick up the phone and call them. Could you not send somebody a text that says, please call me? Are you more likely to get a call back on a text that says, please call me? Yes or no? Yeah. There's still dealerships that block the server, so salespeople can't log into social media in the showroom. They got like a Faraday cage around the showroom. Who's seen this? There's a huge gap between what you're talking about and where the business is. It's not even funny. And lead generation is something you got to address. Test drives are still going to happen some way, somehow. Who's ever gone to a phone store and VR'd a car or done VR on a phone? Have you seen the technology of VR with a phone, yes or no? It's pretty good technology on a phone. So this is going to come to mainstream on websites. Cadillac, I know, just launched this. Somebody sent me an article through LinkedIn It was called the demise or the death of the car salesman or car sales lady, whatever it was. And it was because you could do a virtual walk around with a live assistant on a car. I think Hyundai might have it too. Has anybody seen this? Okay, so what's happening with this is more and more the decision making, the selection is happening, but people still, because it's a physical product and we're not living in, well, maybe we are in a VR if you follow that, but we're not living in driving a VR car yet. They still seem to want to physically drive a car. Is that fair? Very few people, local buyers, feel confident enough in the pricing procedure to finalize price online, especially if there's a trade. So today in dealerships processes, the gap is how are we doing with lead generation, pricing, and test drives? Because yeah, the online thing is there, but it's not taking away our job as a dealer. Let's write down the next P. Next P is practices. Okay, practices. BlackBerry, anybody kind of remember that company? They started the smartphone industry. They had 100% market share. You watch an old Jerry Seinfeld, everybody's going, where's my BlackBerry? They had it locked. Nobody else had that technology. And then they did not kind of get it through their heads that everybody didn't need a keyboard and the importance of apps. And now you say BlackBerry, and you heard what happened. People laugh. They laugh. Okay, so the phrase here, if you want to write it down and remember it, it's called adapt or die or evolve or dissolve. But you got to keep it realistic to where the market is. When we drive our car, you can't stare at the speedometer. You can't stare at the car behind you or in front of you. You can't stare too down. There's a sweet spot of where you're going to look when you're driving to know your surroundings and drive into that gap. But there's a sweet spot in that visual, and I think business is a lot like that. Okay, so we have principles, we have practices. Next P to write down, please, is psychology. It does start with a P. Okay, PSY. This is my sort of claim to fame. I'm formally trained in a lot of psychology. I take a course from a few key people all the time. I follow people online that are into it. So my thing is really about this. And psychology really is the study of reactions. It's how to create a reaction. It's how to manage a reaction. And you can't take the psychology piece yet all the way into technology because people are still involved. So psychology, your own psychology, your people's psychology, how they're trained, what they know is still a big piece, as well as how your customers are reacting. And we've got a business unit we just started up to address what he just talked about, that nobody wants to fill in forms online. It takes too much time. And then once you fill in that form, how long does it take to get back? If you get back, most of your software is wired or is set up. You have a 50% chance when a dealership sends back an email, you're in the junk mail. That's why you're only getting 10 or 15% engagement back in your email inquiries. You're actually in the junk mail half the time. Like, big disparity here on how we have to communicate with the customer and how the market's kind of moved. Okay? So anyway, psychology is the study of reactions. Next P is patterns. He was talking about patterns, right? Where patterns are going to go, where they've been. A couple of problems with patterns. A lot of us don't measure our patterns honestly, or we're looking at the wrong number. One of the things we talk about in our trainings with internet leads is to first off measure how many people are even getting back to you. So dealerships responding, and for the most part, you probably only have a 30% re-engagement rate. So that person's not even a lead unless you're having a conversation. So we've got to figure out how to re-engage that customer. It's not hard to do it, but you've got to track the right numbers. Now, an intelligent person, if they're tracking honest numbers, when they find out something's not working, you're supposed to make some what? Some changes. Could you imagine having a dishonest GPS? So you got a pessimistic GPS. Maybe that's your manager. So you think it's right, but the GPS is always telling you a mile further away than what you are. You're still freaking lost, yes or no? Yes. Yeah. So now you're working for an optimistic. You got an optimistic GPS. That's great. Now it's telling you you're a mile closer than you are. You're still what? When I go rated R sometimes, I'll try not to because it's being filmed, okay? But you've got to be dead on, spot on with your assessment of what's happening, because if not, it's a big head fake, and a lot of us are just not honest with ourselves. We're not. In our own personal lives, in our own finances, in our health, in our money, and in our businesses. So patterns, I'd like one word there, please, is honesty. Okay, honesty. All right, next P is predictable. If you get the other P's, the principles, the practices, psychology, and the patterns lined up, your business becomes a little more predictable. When it becomes predictable, and you master a situation that's currently working, you got to know, again, the market's going to what? It's going to change again, and then you're back to looking at all the other stuff, or you're in an unpredictable situation again, day in, day out. So the last P is what it's all about, and it's called probability. Okay, and probability is odds. You got to get over the fact, obviously, you're not going to sell everybody. We probably could sell a few more if we tried. I joke about it, but it's true. In the reality of selling cars, and my OMVIC is still good. I'm registered with a dealer group here in Toronto. I've never stopped selling cars. I've been in the business since I was 16. My family owns a used car lot in London. Just because somebody has a driver's license doesn't mean they're sane. Yes or no? Yes. Not everybody fills out web forms sober. So we're dealing with a lot of craziness all the time, and some people that you can't get along with become your best friends. Tough customers, you know, they're all over the place, but we're not going to sell everybody a car. We have to try, and your people have got to be emotionally okay with that and built for that psychology of failure and success in order to kind of move themselves forward. So on the front side of that sheet, if we can kind of go through this quick, I'm used to talking for 3 days, okay? Literally, a lot of my classes are 3 days, so I'm going to try to go through some concepts here in about 45 minutes if I could. And just to engage the group a little bit, can somebody read out the first point for me, please? What's the first point? Anybody? Thank you. Go ahead, Steve. Oh, we got 3. Okay, so we got 3 readers, 3 volunteers, so you guys are going to read. Okay, you read first. Arthur.
Dozens of brands, hundreds of models, and infinite used car choices. With internet pricing, it's very difficult to have constant price for product.
So who's my car dealers in the room? Who's working in dealerships here? Okay, do you guys use any kind of I'm not going to name systems here, promote anybody, but a system that will price out used car inventory? That scrapes the internet for pricing. There's a few of them. How many times a week or a month are you guys repricing your used cars?
I'd say at least once a week.
At least once a week, right? Some people do it daily, all right? So you've got the lowest price, whatever. You know what? Check in 5 minutes. Somebody saw your car and did what? Okay, and if you actually go from brand to brand like I do, you got to be honest, everybody builds a great car. So product and price right now is not the driving factors in your business. It can't be. Competition is way too stiff. The internet changes the numbers on you every 5 minutes. Is that fair to say or no? So I think that trend's pretty true. Marty, what's the next one?
Most buyers use the internet to research price or product information. People sometimes know more or think they do about the car than you.
Yeah, you got a customer studying one car for 6 months, one model for 6 months, and you have 60 models to keep up with. So that's not going to be uncommon. They may, in fact, know the vehicle better than your salespeople. Okay, Steve?
We're often told and trained to slow down the sale, but today our fastest transactions are often our most profitable.
Can you grab my tea, the small one, the small tea? Okay, so for those of you in the showroom right now, if you actually take a look at your gross profit on a 3-hour car deal versus a 45-minute car deal, where is the front-end gross higher? Absolutely. And if you're a finance manager, you'd rather take a turn on a customer that took an hour to buy a car or somebody who took 3 hours to buy a car. This metric is completely opposite to when I started in the business, where always about stay off price, slow it down, stay off price, slow it down. And this mantra is still in our DNA. It's still being taught by a lot of training companies. And you tell me, how much time does somebody have right now on a website? If you can't find something, or if that website freezes, it's under 10 seconds for sure. Probably now it's under 5. Okay? Do you go back to any company or business because you like the fact that the service is slow? It's a joke, right? What's the difference between the MTO or a DMV office, a government office, versus Amazon? It's that. It's pace. It's flow. So again, real world, somebody walks into your building physically. Salespeople can't find the car. The car they find is dirty. Gas light is on. Can't find a dealer plate. Can't find the keys. Can't find a manager. Can't find somebody doing appraisal. Like, we want to talk about cyberspace, and it's absolutely coming. But cyberspace still concludes, they're still picking up a physical car. Your real space has to be lined up. And to me, that's all training, and it's processes and commitment from your people. So anyways, we need to keep things what? Moving along. I call it flow. We just got to keep things moving. Okay, and when things stop, you have a problem. Okay, so look at that whole flow and your whole pace in all departments and make sure it matches. Arthur, what's the next one?
Very few buy online, and most that do are long-distance deals. The internet gives us access to new markets, especially used cars.
Okay, so again, I'm in dealerships all the time, training and selling and doing that kind of stuff. Used car sales. Who sold a used car like out of province? So what happens here? They go online, they look for a car. You happen to have the needle in your haystack, and so you sell that vehicle because they're looking for a needle in the haystack, and you happen to have it. Local people, and again to the car dealers in the room, I ask you this because I've asked this again in the last 6 months. I literally could just do a ring around North America on asking this question. What percentage of your new car customers or used car customers that are local buy the car online? Local. Within 35, 40-minute drive, an hour drive, a half an hour.
40, 45% used cars on my side.
Buy the car online, locally. That's strong. What is it for new?
Our PMA, 92%.
92% of local customers buy local, correct? So what's happening still is a lot of people, you know, when they're looking at the car online, they're probably thinking, before I click purchase, maybe I should go physically check out the car, because maybe it's not like what I really, you know, expect. And yeah, I've got pricing online, but maybe face-to-face I can compare or do something different. Now they will do, and exactly what he said, and it's a great analogy, start online, go physical, go back up and buy. Start physical, go online, come back down and buy. But there's this relationship of virtual and physical reality. A lot of people, I don't think in the near future, they buy a car so infrequently, it's so much money, I don't think they're going to go what I call from click to brick online. A lot of people. So I don't think you're going away. I don't think in our lifetime the franchise car dealer is going away. When you watch automotive news or you read the Canadian Auto World, some of these people saying, oh, it's a dying. I'm not sure if it's a dying. Manufacturers like to get rid of you guys. I worked for manufacturers for 7 years in my stints. I've done everything but own a new car franchise and put together cars on assembly lines. I've done everything else. They would love to get rid of you. Yes or no? Hard to do with the Competitions Act, the franchise laws, and the fact that people seem to still physically want to walk into a store. But if they had their way, you'd all be gone. Is that fair to say? Yes, it is. This is why I don't do manufacturer training. It says on my website, don't call me if you're a manufacturer, because I only work for car dealers, because that's my base. I'm not going to sit here and tell you something that might make somebody else happy. To me, it's just kind of reality of where it is. I'm a little bit too direct for my own good sometimes. Steve?
It's funny, they'll buy a home for $700,000, $800,000 online from an architect's drawing, and they won't buy a car for 30 or 40 grand.
And I use that analogy. So let's look at a home. Between Google Earth, proximity Google Earth, coming down on top of a house now, Google Maps Street View, fully disclosed listings from a real estate agent, could you or could you not buy a property sight unseen? Can you get a virtual tour inside a property, yes or no? And actually, there's more of that going on than there is cars. And it's 10 times the price. I'm not too sure why that is, but there is more of that going on. You're a real estate agent, aren't you? Yeah. Is that pretty true?
I find that, so the advantage of purchasing something from a blueprint generally has a price advantage because
Okay.
it's usually, well now I find that pre-construction condos in Toronto have caught up to the resale price point, so it's
Yeah.
not that much of a price advantage.
Okay.
But it's all about the risk adversity of the client, how much they want to risk buying something, and the price difference is what's really worthwhile.
Interesting. There you go. Okay, what's our next trend? What's the next one? Arthur.
Yeah, many people buy something different than they originally requested. We're not order takers, as they often don't buy the exact car research.
They switch make, they switch model, they switch color, they go from new to used to a demo and all over the place. Is that not true? That happens in the difference between the virtual and physical reality when they actually end up in a store. Just something's not matching, something's not available, something doesn't seem to be the same. So switch cars are still there, and switch cars generally at the last moment are presented by humans. And the human has to know the inventory and the programs and the incentive and be professional. And so, again, sales process, I'm just coming back to that. You still have to have a sales process in a store that works. Marty?
A growing number of people are credit curious or credit concerned, and approvals can be unpredictable, but we only have credit apps on our website and F&I not in our showroom process.
This is a funny thing. I'm in dealerships all the time. If dealerships out there, who's in the room, or when you're out in the supplier chain, everybody's got, a lot of people have credit apps on their website, yes or no? And of course, they're sitting in the finance office. You walk into a Canadian dealership today and see if salespeople are even allowed to have a credit application on their desk. Who here has, I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to bet nobody here has a credit application in their sales process. Okay? Now, the Canadian banks are following the American banks. Do you think a bank wants to lend out money at prime? No, they don't. How can they make any money? But what if I did this, which is exactly what's going on as best that I can tell. I don't want to commit myself here on tape. Banks hold the keys to the scoring system. So what if I can score somebody like they're a risk, but I know they're not? What does it allow the bank to do? Juice you. Yes or no? So right now, because of a lot of dynamics in Canada and North America, there's a growing number of people that either never get credit, get too much credit, are self-employed, their credit utilization is weird on their beacon score, or their bureau is off, and their major concern when they're dealing with you is not negotiating a price, it's picking out a car, and their negotiation is when they get what? Approved, or think they can. And if you look at your transaction times, which transaction time is shorter? A credit deal or a grind out price deal? credit deal. Which profit is higher? 100%. Yet we don't allow our salespeople to even talk about it. You want to talk about putting their hands behind their back? It's not even funny. So part of my sales process has always been how an intelligent salesperson can bring it up without offending anybody, because somebody could be paying cash, they might be curious, they might have a concern, but credit has to be part of what goes on in a showroom, because it's part of what happens in a transaction. And that trend, if you follow that demographic, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but we're reluctant to move into that gap. And I honestly don't even understand it. I think it's a training piece. It's not understood. It's over-controlling F&I people. A lot of F&I departments run the dealership. They know the only person making any money in the store is the F&I manager. They got you all by the tail. But what they don't seem to remember is until somebody sells a car, I don't get a turn. Yes or no? So odd dynamic when you actually look at it real world. What's the next one? Steve.
Many people buy because they're connected with the salesperson on some level. If they don't like or respect you, they probably won't buy.
Yes or no?
100% true.
Yes. Simple things like somebody sends you an email, a really long email, you reply short. Anybody get a long text from a friend and they can tell that you read it? You're like, oh my God, what do I do this right now? Because if you don't reply and don't reply with a message at length, it's a blow off, is it not? So mirroring, we have to mirror people by text, by email, on the phone, face to face. But basically, if they don't like somebody in the building, could it blow your chances? Yes. Could they not like you online from something you did online? Yes. It happens a lot. So again, it's back to people. It's back to training in my estimation. Next one, Arthur.
We have a lower quantity but higher quality of walk-in traffic in the last 10 to 15 years. I usually shop less physically, more virtually, and often show up ready to buy.
What do you think? Are we more transaction ready now when we walk into a store than we were 10 years ago? Okay. Who's old enough here to remember, I hate to even say that I clearly remember doing this a lot, even for business trips. Who remembers booking trips through a travel agent? Okay, so somebody actually remember this fairly clear? Somebody want to explain how this used to work? Who wants to tell us a story? Okay. What used to happen is you pull up to a strip mall or walk in the mall, you sit down with somebody, they show you some brochures and some price sheets, and you sit there and whatever for a couple hours, and off of blind faith, you bought the trip. And then you got there, and every time I did it, it was never like what I expected. How much research can you do now on a trip before you ever get there? Online. You got Priceline, you got virtual tours, you got everything. You walk around and you go, look, honey, it's exactly what we expected. We did such a good job. And now here's the deal. You are selecting online based on your own personal criteria. Some people want to pay this much. Some people want to pay that much. Some people want to pay this much and have that experience. Not many people want to pay this much and have that experience. Correct? Okay. So now let's do another analogy psychologically to online dating. I don't know if you want to admit you do it because your friends probably do it, not you. But with online dating, when you start chatting on that website, is it really a lead yet? When does it become a hot lead?
Make an appointment.
Well, before that.
When they respond.
When you get them off the website. Yes or no? Yes, and same with the car dealer. People are the most hostile on websites and behind the keyboards. It's anonymous. You start texting or calling, it's a lot more honest than behind a keyboard. Correct? Okay, so let's stick with online dating as a comparison to the car business a little bit. And so the selection is done online, everything looks good, and you meet in the Starbucks or wherever you're meeting for your coffee or tea, and you crack a little joke, and the other person smiles, and they got no front teeth. But they had front teeth on their profile. Is that a problem or not? Now here's the deal. If you posted your picture with no front teeth, you still would have a date, but you'd be dating somebody that's into somebody with no front teeth. Where the problem comes is when your virtual image doesn't match the reality. So when we book appointments and bring people in, if your story when they land is at all different than what you told them on the phone or on the internet, all that work and effort goes where? So you can't have any discrepancies between the story online, the story on the phone, the story by text, on the pictures, on the paperwork to when they physically show up. Because it's exactly like online dating. It's got to be exactly matching. Yes or no? Or you've wasted a ton of what? Time and money. Anyways, just a thought. Next one. Marty.
You can test drive a car in VR and get a price or trade value from AI or from a salesperson online, but a physical test drive and or face-to-face price is how local buyers finalize.
One or the other, would that be fairly true? Yeah, they're coming for the pricing or the drive. Is that pretty true with almost everybody still locally? I'm going to challenge you to this, and whatever percentage you think it is, go to your deliveries in the last 6 months with your sales team, have a meeting, and say who here remembers selling these cars, who was local, who here bought the car sight unseen or did the pricing sight unseen and just literally came in to complete paperwork. Local people. I mean, they didn't do anything face to face. They came in just to pick it up. I can tell you what that number is going to be. It's 0. It's 0. Either pricing negotiations, credit, or car was done face-to-face. Some of it was maybe done online. That piece was done face-to-face with your local customers. It is actually 0. Yes or no? I'm telling you that's what it is if you actually look at it. It might have started somewhere, but there was something they finished. Where am I going with that concept? You're going nowhere. Online purchases are not new. Jerry Barg in Cambridge, Ontario, client of mine when he still had Barg Automotive 20 years ago, had online buying. It's not new, but something about a car, the confusion of it, whatever, local people must be thinking this. You know what? I could click, but maybe I should, maybe I should try that car out. Maybe I should look at this guy. Maybe I should check out service. Because they know you're most of you, 20 minutes away from, half an hour away from where they are. So am I about online? Absolutely. Like I said, our business is about it, no question. But finalization for local people, for some reason, and I'm not talking with a Tesla or a Genesis when there's only one dealer, and so they can do one price. I'm talking when you got, how many GM dealers do you think are within a 50-kilometer radius, 50-mile radius from here? It's about 40. So if somebody wants to shop, they can really what? Thinking they're going to find that deal of a century. So until that model changes, with consolidation by the factory or other dealers, we're kind of where we are. But you got to get your online game ready. I'm not denying anything that he said. And people come in with Unhaggle and Car Cost Canada and True Car in the States and all that. But there's still, and we look at numbers in the US, like Carvana. Do you have any idea the consolidation that's happened in the States and the population centers in the US and how those markets are so different than here? You hear a dealership down there doing 2,000 cars a month, it's not even unheard of. But then ask them how many franchise dealers like that are in the area on a population basis. It's about 1/10 maybe of Canada, maybe. So the US model, when you look at it, is a little bit different than here, just based on our geography. But I'm not denying to keep up, and I'm not denying the changes. I'm saying right now, manage your business. Because while you sit here and wait for the incoming, you got problems going on right now. Steve.
We can waste hours avoiding price and build value on the wrong car the buyer can't afford. Building value on the wrong car makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Are your salespeople allowed to talk price and payment during the sale in their own way, anyhow, somehow, or have you totally pulled that away from them? I don't know. There is a sweet spot between staying off price, which is a problem, because it's an elephant in the room. Customers want to know what? And getting into exact price too early when you have no rapport or selection. So I call it maybe staying off exact price, but you've got to make, my estimation, credit applications and discussion of price and payment part of the sales process, possibly, if that's what the customer wants to do. I don't know. Arthur, what's the next one?
20 to 25 opportunities per month per rep is average, and most of the traffic is ready to buy, but we don't close most right.
And in most stores I'm in, 20 to 25 a month. These opportunities are a total now of sales calls, emails, and walk-ins. So a rep gets maybe one a day, 1 or 2 a day. And I've got some clients that are closing 65% of all their traffic that physically shows up with people measuring it accurately, 2/3. You were one of them. Yes or no? When we first met, Marty, I always talk, when you're in the room, how many cars a month were you doing when we first met? You were good. He was at an Nissan Infinity store, not far from here. How many cars a month were you delivering?
12 to 15.
12 to 15. And within less than a year, what did your average go to?
35.
And what was your best month?
52.
What was your average transaction time?
43 minutes.
How much?
43.
From meet and greet to F&I, 43 minutes.
I track it too. I always put it on the customer statement sheet, like time they came in and time it closed.
Before you met me, were you trained to stay off price?
100%.
And were you trained to slow it down?
Oh, yeah.
And were you trained to inundate the customer with product knowledge?
Yes.
What happened when you made it a little simpler and more effective in those areas? You,
Got a lot easier. Sold a lot more cars.
it's a psychology. So again, it's just where the business has been, where it is, that gap. Okay, Steve, what's the next one?
20 to 25 opportunities per month.
We just did that one, Steve. We just did that one. It's okay, next one.
Everyone's attention spans are shorter or our expectations for simple information are higher. As a buyer slowing me down, and avoiding my price talk wouldn't work on me.
Do people have short attention spans? Are they getting shorter all the time? One of the red flags in your showroom is when the customer's on their phone. If you see customers on their phone a lot, they've either been totally disengaged by the sales rep or something has happened with credibility. So a lot of it is you want to keep it moving, kind of like I am with this talk, to force the person to engage with you and keep them off their what? I've had to change how I teach. That's why I don't use PowerPoint. Because I will lose you if I use PowerPoint. So, and I'm not knocking your PowerPoint. You need to do what you're doing because you've got a lot more data than I'm doing here, a lot more data. But if you walk around your showroom and your customers are on their phone, and my goodness, if the customer's alone, what is the first thing people pick up when they're left alone? When's the last time any of my car dealer friends saw something really good happen for you when the customer went on their phone? Not much. Arthur?
There's a difference between our walk-in closing ratio versus repeat and referral closing ratio. Appointments from any source generally buy even more often than walk-ins.
Yes or no? Yes. So appointments are still a very simple, basic metric. Now, I don't care if it's a repeat, a referral, a be back, somebody you've networked with, somebody you met originally on social media. Those people tend to book what? Appointments. And so do sales calls that you handle properly and internet leads. And if you look at your mix of business on your floor, how skilled and how much business is your average rep getting from repeats and referrals and be-backs and networks and social media and sales calls and internet leads? And all those people right now, most of them anyways, not all of them, before they buy, still seem to want to physically what? Walk in. Now, once they walk in, would you say a test drive and a price, a proposal of some type, trade or not, test drive and proposal is important? Okay? If somebody comes into your dealership and doesn't get a test drive or a price, what do you think they're saying when they go back to their car? Waste of time, because you actually gave them nothing they couldn't have got off their what? Now let's talk about that for a second. Basic car sales, selling, test drive, right? Physical involvement with the product, a presentation, a walkthrough on a house, anything you want to talk about that way. Again, going through the list, you have a salesperson that maybe is a little lazy. It's easier to sit down and look at numbers and dig out a car. Yes or no? You got bad weather we got to deal with. You got cars you can't find. Again, you got cars with no gas. You can't find the keys. You can't find the plates. We maybe kind of backed up trying to take a copy of the license. You have a manager that won't walk the floor and say hello to people. A sales manager ambassador is walking the floor, hey, good morning, folks. What car are you driving? Oh, come on, you're here. I'll get the keys. Could a manager, just through a 2-second pat and chat, get a customer to go for a test drive in a really loving, polite way, yes or no? When you're in a restaurant and somebody comes around and says, hey, how's the dinner? Everything okay? Does their experience get better or worse? If that same manager is by the door, can he or she catch any problems that have happened? So we have to get involved early and often and not just last minute. Would we agree? So test drive is the only step that really matters when they're there physically. And then now here's the other side. What if they come in and they get a test drive but no proposal? Do some people buy a car without a drive? Some people do buy a car without a drive. Does anybody buy a vehicle without verifying pricing? No. So now we have another culture problem. Oh, don't show him numbers. We don't think he's buying today. Yes or no? Of course. So now we won't show. We don't know how to do a range quote. There's a lot of different quotes you can do that aren't going to hurt you in any way. If you decide not to put out numbers, it's a catch-22. You've guaranteed they can't what? So they might buy without a drive. They can't buy without numbers. Correct? What happens to your closing ratio when people go for a test drive and get numbers? Goes up. So now here's another lie of the industry. You track those numbers separately. If they did all this research, or did any research at all, and some people I know use us for the research, but most people do some research. They do all this research, they show up, either a fresh walk-in or an appointment, and they only go for a drive. This is what most people do. In most cases, that same franchise as you is sitting with another half an hour from them. They go, well, I was already there for a drive. I think I'll go to the other one to get the price. And it's a 2-piece puzzle now, test drive and proposal. So when you only do a test drive with no price, you're almost guaranteeing they're going to do what as soon as they walk in the other store? Yes? Probably. Now let's reverse the problem. You're doing pricing but no test drives. Now you're pricing, that's another problem, is it not? So really, unless you do both, you've done nothing. If you actually metric that out, but your CRM, right? Oh, we did a test drive. Oh, nice job. Really? Nice job? You just set it up for who? The other store. You just closed their deal because you wouldn't even show him what. So let's say you decide to put out a range quote. So he says, I'm not buying for 6 months. Hey, no problem. You got 7 minutes, no obligation. No obligation, I want to show you something. And you sit down and quickly, not an hour, quickly, like if you go from test drive and it takes you 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes to get a price or a trade value, what do you think is happening to the excitement here at this point? You're losing your credibility. It's like giving somebody a bowl of soup in a restaurant. Oh, the spoon. Yeah, right. Spoon. And as he's looking me to look for a spoon, and this thing's cooling off, what's happening to his likelihood to tip me? To buy a dessert or come back? So every time we make a mistake, we could lose enough credibility, we lose that sale. Now, if you're in a restaurant, and you only brought the bowl of soup with the spoon, let's say you're pretty good 80% of the time. That means 20% of the time the soup comes out no spoon. You're out of business, are you not? But somehow we're okay with half our customers not going for a drive, can't find the car, can't find the manager, can't get a number, can't get appraisal, why don't you come back, can't get this. A lot of dealers, I'm not knocking you, you guys could all be great. A lot of dealers are only car dealers, maybe 60% of the time. Because the other 40%, they're okay just not having it quite go right. And here's the biggest problem. The better this research gets, and the more they're be able to do the whole decision-making selection process online, that means more and more people when they show up are ready to what? Pull the trigger. You have to be better today at retail, so much more so than when I was in it, when I first started. When I was 19, as kind of a jack of all trades, master of nothing at Forest City Chrysler in London, the sales manager used to go like this to me. I was kind of a lot kid and doing whatever. He'd go like that, which meant I was supposed to go pull a car in behind a customer's car and pretend I was reorganizing a lot. And pulling a car in behind a customer's car while I reorganized a lot was a way to make him so he couldn't leave. And maybe 90 minutes later, you would just see them go like this. Okay, fine, I'll take it. And here's why. They had to go to dealer to dealer to dealer to do basic research. Now they can do it all where? So you got to be so on point now when people show up, it's not funny. And people's expectations, let's get realistic. Is a customer always right? They're not always right. Most people are pretty freaking insane anymore. You say slightly the wrong word, and all of my course books have a rated R at the beginning because I talk like a normal human being still. You say slightly the wrong word with people, people are triggered like this. Are you getting training on what words trigger people today during a car deal? Like asking a woman, is anybody helping you make the decision? It happens every day. Asking somebody young, who else is involved in the decision-making process? They both think right there, you just suggested, you don't think they can what? Big discrepancies when it actually comes down to us closing the customer when they can. So if you've worked switchboard lately, and the receptionist says, hey, I'll put you over to who's your salesperson? Way more than half say they can't what? I don't remember. So we do all this time and effort, and repeats and referrals are so important, and then we kind of drop the ball, and maybe there's a lot of turnover, maybe the person's not memorable, but repeats and referrals for any company is still the holy grail. Yes or no? Absolutely. Don't forget that business. In the service drive, repeats and referrals keep you in business. CSI in the showroom is for the manufacturer to drive traffic. It shows up in the surveys and articles in a high spot, so it looks like you're a good brand. But CSI in the shop is what keeps you open. Arthur?
Most salespeople spend most of their shift waiting for fresh traffic. We could spend a bit more time lead generating, pursuing, and attracting business.
How many hours a day do you think the average retail car salesperson is actually productive, like most of us had to be productive at other jobs?
45 minutes.
I don't know, but it's, right? Do we waste a lot of time? Oh my God, there's so much wasted time in a showroom. It's not even funny. It's not even funny. And people complain about not making enough money, and I would never do this. Okay, I'm just talking on an hourly basis. Car salespeople are overpaid so much it's not funny when you actually look how many hours they what. And then you have your top one that's maybe underpaid because she's so good, she's so productive. But most people, they're not really doing much in a showroom all day long. Right? So in comes the fear of the dealer. Faraday cage the showroom, no more Facebook. So the odd guy that actually is using it for sales can't do it. Is there another one there?
Yep. Most people have an email address, cell phone, text message, LinkedIn, Facebook. We could ask for and use these more often.
Is there a lot of ways to recontact people? There's so many ways it's not funny, okay? So anyways, if you want to just go to the back, one more little thing, and then I'm going to finish up here. This is about my 45 minutes, just trying to keep things on point. Can you do a triangle? I want to show you something. Just do a triangle. And if I had a whiteboard, I'd draw it out, but just do a little triangle. And if you want to make it a 3-level triangle, like a pyramid with 3 chunks, 3 levels this way. And then the last one on the bottom, the big one, can you break it up into 3 squares or three chunks? Okay, so you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas in the triangle. Okay, in our business right now, that bottom half, that bottom piece with the 3 chunks is roughly 10 car a month salespeople. So the majority of the business is still doing about 10 cars a month. And I'm going to show you this is a little depressing, a little bit, but then I'm going to talk about the customer experience. In one of those chunks, about 1/3 of a lot of showrooms is new hires. The new hire may or may not have training, but they got a great attitude. Okay? The middle chunk is some of these people now also, another 1/3 of that bottom or that average is what I call kind of complacent. Okay? And the other chunk on the other side is what I call special and negative. And if whoever's laughing is because you know who I'm talking about. Okay? So what happens is the special negative person that's a little bit of an attitude cancer for the store and for management, if allowed to stay, will completely corrupt, corrode, and destroy any new hires that come in. Because they recognize they're going to start taking their traffic a little bit. So they're going to get them to quit, get fired, be inept, get depressed, whatever. And this is on the bottom between the complacents and the new hires, and the negative specials is probably in a lot of stores more than half the floor. I'd say probably 2/3 of the store. The next level up is about 20 cars a month. I call this level great. I tell new people to watch these people very well because they're going to give you a little bit of a roadmap on how to be successful. And the top is what they call the 3%er. And it's 5% of our business or whatever it is that does maybe 30 cars a month or more. Does anybody know any salespeople that you've ever worked with or do work with that have an assistant? Yeah. And the claim to fame on that, Joe Girard, who just passed away about a month ago, good friend of mine, Joe Girard, still in the Guinness Book of World Records. I'm the only living guy to ever do any work with Joe Girard that still holds the Guinness Book of World Record title as the #1 salesperson ever. And the way that he sold in the 60s and 70s, you couldn't do it now. Actually, a lot of it's illegal. Okay? But the guy's psychology was absolutely phenomenal. His process, though, you just couldn't do it anymore. But I'll tell you all he did. Massive lead generator. He had a system built so when you came in, you physically went for a what? Test drive. And he was the one to serve what? That's what he did. That has not changed. Lead generation, test drive proposal, to this point, is still not a lot different. Again, though, some might start online, some might start physically, but the way it concludes, they have to do it all like about a 3-piece puzzle. Anyways, where I'm going with is this. If I walk into a dealership today, that's who I'm going to meet. So if you look at that triangle, I just want to give you a little bit of insight on where this is going. If I walk into a dealership and meet a new hire with no training, I'm going to get a great attitude, but a very, very confusing process. And most of the time, they're off with the manager looking for guidance. Is that true or not? So I don't know what your training process is for new people, but whoever's doing it in the store or wherever, address it. What if they meet Mr. or Mrs. Complacent? You got a 50-50 chance it's going to go okay. Okay? What if they meet Mr. Special and Negative? And he doesn't like something you said. Like, you recognize you want way too much for your trade. The price you just said is ridiculous. The payment's ridiculous. I don't like your culture. I don't like anything about what you're like that. These people just are waiting to write you off. So I'm going to tell you right now, in most dealerships, that is who's waiting on traffic. Now, this next level, the 20-car person, you're going to be very lucky to walk into a company, even a real estate company, and meet a top 20%er, because a lot of them are mostly too busy dealing with their own what? Those people aren't really available for all the walk-ins, all the emails, all the sales calls, because they've got their own pipeline, correct? And the top people, I call them angels at the top of that pyramid, you don't get in unless you're referred in, because they only deal with their what? So looking at that triangle, where's your only hope? Yes. That have never worked at another dealership, have no bad habits, that you as a competent manager can groom from the grass up. It's your only hope. And you hope that new hire becomes awesome and pushes everybody out, becomes a 20%er, you bring somebody else in new. But then we hear this all the time. Oh, I don't have time, training's a waste of So what are you putting your hope in? What if the 20%er, 3%er gets headhunted and leaves? Who's ever seen that collapse a dealership? Not to mention any names. Anyways, the trend is your friend. If you don't adapt or die, all that stuff is cool. But while you're watching the trends, you got to pay attention to your business, because that's right now what's putting groceries in the fridge and what's running the heat and hydro. Don't not pay attention to what's going on in the store. And don't give up hope, because you know what? Your belief system runs everything. And if you start believing the sky's falling, the odd thing starts to happen. Your sky starts to what? It starts to fall. So watch your own psychology day to day in your business, because that's really what's driving it. Make sense? Okay, any thoughts or questions for me? Anything you want to ask or discuss? Nothing?
You've got to have questions for Duane.
Great job, team.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. All done.